the last few minutes, 2 Scots have tested positive for the swine flu virus. The pair are being held in isolation at Monklands Hospital in Airdrie, where they've been tested after returning from Mexico last week. Well, we can now join our health correspondent Eleanor Bradford at the hospital for this breaking news. Eleanor.
Jackie, well, this is a very unexpected result, particularly as the 2 people being looked after here were not thought to have come into contact with an infected area in Mexico. It shows just how quickly the virus can spread and how important it is to remain vigilant. This evening, this infection control ward at Monklands Hospital remains the centre of attention. It's likely this is where 2 Scots are being treated after their return from Mexico last Tuesday. In Mexico City and other affected areas, the panic is visible. However, most holidaymakers aren't returning from infected areas, including the 2 in hospital. This man returning through Gatwick saw no special arrangements.
Nothing at all. First thing, wife's like, what are we doing on television? And that guy's like, you hear about the kind of pig flu that's going about Cancun or Mexico? And I'm like, nope.
So how likely is it there'll be an outbreak of swine flu in the UK, and in particular Scotland? These are the Mexican states affected by swine flu. There are flights to the UK from Mexico City. These are the passengers who'll need to be monitored very closely. But all flights to Scotland are to and from here, the Yucatan Peninsula, and in particular the holiday resort of Cancun, many miles away from infected areas. So what's the advice for travellers?
At the moment it's not perceived there is any particular risk in the holiday resorts at all, and the advice is just to go. But that's not Barhead travel advice, that's Foreign Office advice.
At home, the risk remains low.
There isn't a pandemic yet, but there's quite a lot of precautionary things they can be doing, like, for example, putting people in isolation if they think they might have swine flu. There's a lot of surveillance going on, looking for the virus, and then, of course, there are large stocks of Tamiflu ready to use if the virus took off.
The priority for the Scottish Government is making sure the virus doesn't take off.
Given that so many of the cases that have been identified outside Mexico, all of them, as far as I'm aware, have had very minor symptoms. It does seem as if this may turn out to be much less aggressive and virulent than the avian flu strain.
So, Eleanor, how concerned should people be?
Well, the virus is certainly infectious, Jackie. Out of the 22 people who came into contact with the 2 people being treated here, 7 of them are showing symptoms and are currently being monitored and treated. However, that's no reason to panic. What we're being told is that there is every sign that this virus does respond to treatment and, importantly, does respond to the antivirals which are available and which the Scottish Government has good stockpiles of.
Now, what sort of precautions should people be taking?
Well, first of all, the thing to emphasise is that it's very unlikely still that you would come into contact with this virus. These 2 people here at Monklands were returning from Mexico, returning what we now know from an infected area. It's unlikely that anyone else would be in that situation. There may be revised travel guidelines to Mexico now, but for everyone else, the situation remains pretty much the same. Just observe normal hygiene, and if you have come into contact with anyone who you believe has come from an infected area, then to be especially vigilant. That's the most important thing at the moment, as these 2 were, and that's why the situation has been contained so successfully at the moment.
Eleanor, thank you. And of course, we hope to be returning to this story later in the programme. Now, other news. A jury has finished